it's the key. No more starving, getting rid of inflammation. Choosing healthy choices, providing you with sound information. Bringing balance to hormones and insulin through food. With DFL, teaching you food choices to see it through. DFL, we're teaching you to eat food right. Teaching you to pair food with each bite. Balancing our body's microbiome, feeling so right. With diet-free life, that helps futures lose by.
All right, everybody. Hey, this is Robert Ferguson, your nutritionist, a guy who shares because I care. And today is no different. And today, let me tell you, I have a guest. Yes, Sharon Gist is in the house. And before I bring her on, let me tell you, and she's in the green room so she can hear exactly what we're going to talk about. And it's titled, Doctors Lie About Statins and Cholesterol. Doctors lie about statins and cholesterol. And let me just say up front, Sharon, I believe, can help me soften it. Maybe I shouldn't say lie, but let me define what I mean by lie. What I mean is that when a person omits information that would put you in a position where you're fully informed, but again, they omit certain things, then you're not completely informed. That's what I'm calling a lie. So maybe there's a nicer, softer way to talk about this. But at the end of the day, I want to give you some tools and some information that can help you when you have the conversation with your doctor. And we can go a little bit deeper than the next time. But the main thing that I want you to understand today is these two things called absolute risk and relative risk, which is a big part of how studies are conducted, which kind of frames what the outcomes are. And when you understand this, it'll help you understand how, well, actually, it'll get you a little upset because you'll start to understand and wonder why pharmaceutical companies advertise and market products the way they market them. So it's going to be interesting. And I'm glad you're here. And let me tell you, if you know anyone that's on a statin or thinking about going on a statin, anyone who's dealing with kidney failure, anyone who's feeling like they have a ton of inflammation in their body, these things don't get easier without you doing some type of work. And if you rely on medications, what happens is it's like a Band-Aid. You don't fix anything, you just delay and make it that much more difficult to actually reverse, if you can, when you're ready to do something about it. So this is serious, but I want to lighten the load because that's why I asked Sharon to come in, because I want to have a conversation. You know, I'm very transparent. She's the same. She has no idea what we were talking about. She can hear me talking about it now. And we're just going to have a fun conversation about it with, again, the goal of you guys, anyone who catch this live or the replay, have a little bit more ammunition to help you better understand why things are marketed a certain way, and to help you realize that there's different ways to help yourself other than relying on medications that are prescribed by most doctors. And not all doctors lie. I have many friends who are physicians, so I'm generalizing it, but let me just put that out there. Not all omit. And the ones, when it comes to, let's say, cholesterol and statins, I would be willing to bet that 99% of them omit what we're going to talk about. So then they would be lying. Okay. So without further delay, let's bring her on. The one and only, let's see, where is Sharon? Let's bring Sharon in here. Hey, what's up, Sharon?
So it's interesting because of, when you say they lie, that's assuming that they know the correct information. Mm-hmm. And I'm not sure all doctors do.
Well, what we're going to talk about today they shouldn't have a license if they don't know what we're talking about today.
But most doctors.
No, I mean, today we're not talking about ingredients. We're actually going to talk about cholesterol and studies, right?
Okay.
Because I mean,
But
you've heard.
and I'm just going to say, I think that a lot of times doctors have a generic, like, oh, okay, cholesterol's bad, and they don't study. They don't look at the studies, and they say, okay, here's a pill that fixes it, and their pharmaceutical person comes to them regularly and says, here, you want to give this to your patients? And they go, fine, I don't care, and they just give it. And I don't think of it's a lie. I just think it's incompetence.
Okay,
And
well,
and
look, we're going to see at the end of this conversation if you believe they're lying, or if you
okay.
believe, you know, I mean, and that's great that you're going to bring in your nice soft side to it, because this is serious.
It is serious.
Yeah.
It is serious. But I think it's also serious how uninformed I mean, I remember I have a
Yeah, but
relative.
remember we're talking about something that they're informed about.
Well, I don't know how informed they really are. That's what I'm
Okay.
saying. I mean, it's like my doctor, who is relatively open to when I say I want this and this. I asked her for an insulin test, and she said, well, you don't really need one. Your A1C is blah, blah, blah. And I said, I want my insulin test because I know I'm having, trouble, and I want to know how bad it is. So she gave me the insulin test. And then when I got it, she said, okay, so it's all because she didn't have a pill to give me. She was like, okay, you got the information. Like, she didn't realize how important it was.
No,
And
and I will give some doctors a pass when it comes to fasting insulin, because I know why they don't know, and I know that it's not standardized as of yet. It will be, but it
well, I'm
isn't
going to
yet.
see her in a few weeks. And I'm going to tell her about omega-3s and 6s and see what she says.
And you know, and she'll know about it, but it's just that they don't know about it to the point that they want to do something about it.
Okay.
Right. So before I even dive in, because I got
Tell
some
me about
slides.
cholesterol. I'm curious about this because I know that there's quote good cholesterol and bad cholesterol, and all that I've ever heard a doctor talk about is your ratio's okay, and from the two of them, and I've never, well, nobody's ever tried to get me on cholesterol, so I don't know what
Okay,
they.
well, you're gonna have a better understanding, because what you're gonna learn today pertains to other challenges and other medications. Okay, so just bear with me, but I want to ask you a question first. Have you ever heard the term absolute risk?
I think I've heard of it, but I don't really know the difference. I don't know what you're saying there, but
Okay.
absolute risk versus relative risk sounds important.
Okay.
No.
And it's very important. And I would be willing to bet that anyone who's taking a statin right now, and many of the wives whose husband's taking a statin, and they're watching us have this conversation, and they can let me know, right? They can comment. I doubt if they know the difference between those two terms. And if you're on a statin, that's probably why you're on a statin, because you don't know what those terms mean when it comes to medications and when it comes to studies. But yet people are taking statins. That's the first thing. If we just start right there, Sharon, right?
Yeah.
Why don't they know that? That means that some doctor or whoever prescribed didn't give them the added information. And part of the oath when you become a physician is to do no harm and to practice informed consent.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so remember all of that. Everything that we talked about is going to play a big role in what we talk about, okay, today. Now, absolute risk, I have an article that I will make available. I wrote an article this morning. I was so pumped about this. But in absolute risk, if you took 100 people, right, and 2 out of the 100 people have some type of disease, whatever it is, or are at risk or have a heart attack, that would mean that there's a 2% absolute risk, right? Because out of 100 people, 2 of the 100 people have a heart attack doing whatever it is. That's pretty easy math. 2%. That's an
Right.
absolute risk. There's no fudging of numbers. There's no playing around. It's very clear. You with me? So when it's absolute risk, that's the one that is real.
Okay.
Okay, that is the one that's hardcore, concrete, solid. And what you're going to learn is that when you look at marketing, they don't market and advertise absolute risk. They advertise relative risk.
So
Okay,
tell me more.
so let me give you an example. So in this ad, you see a woman who's extremely happy. And she's taken a statin called Crestor. And it says, yay, I've lowered my risk of a heart attack by 54%.
And you're
Now,
saying that's relative risk, not absolute.
that is not absolute. That's very good, Sharon. That's relative. Now, I want to stay there for a second because think about this. Let's say you go in and your doctor says, Sharon, you have high blood pressure. And guess what else we found, Sharon? We found that your cholesterol is really high. And then the doctor says, we're going to need to put you on a statin. And you may say, hey, doc, why you want to put me on a statin? And he may say, I want to put you on a statin because if we don't, you're likely to have a stroke or a heart attack, Sharon.
Because my cholesterol is too high.
Yes.
And I'm going to say to him, which cholesterol and
okay,
why?
And you can have that conversation.
But I wouldn't have known to ask about relative versus absolute.
No, well, I mean, and don't go ahead too fast. Stay with me, right? So imagine this woman. She goes in there and the doctor tells her, hey, we're going to have to put you on a statin. And she says, why? Well, you don't want to die, do you? No. So what is the statin going to do? Well, statin is going to reduce your risk of having a heart attack by 54%. Now, Sharon, if they told you by taking a statin, it will reduce the chances of you having a heart attack by 54%, would it kind of have your interest?
It would have my interest, but 54% from what? If I'm not at risk for having a heart attack in the first place, why bother?
No, you are at risk because you have high cholesterol.
Oh, okay.
Right. So that's the whole point. Right.
Yeah.
So when they started working on cholesterol and it became a thing, you have to go back to like 1980. And they knew that they were going to need to create some medications. And around 1988, they came out with the original standardized numbers on what would be considered high cholesterol. And at that time, high cholesterol was 240 for total cholesterol.
Right.
Today it's 200 because they realized after a few years of coming out with those initial numbers that if they widen the tent, if you will, bring the number down instead of coming out with a new drug, then more people will qualify for it and we can get more people on statins and we can make a ton of money.
Just if you lower, I'm sorry.
Just by lowering it, right? More people fall into the category.
But theoretically, you would only lower it if by lowering it, you reduce the risk. I mean, how do we know that 240 versus 200 versus 300 is going to create a heart attack and you're going to lower it by 54%? I don't understand.
I love what you just said because that's where there's holes in this. It's like you have to ask yourself, it's like the way I think as a journalist, as a critical thinker, my thoughts originally was, who came up with those numbers?
Right.
Like, and then why, and if they were so sure in 1988 and the total cholesterol is 240, why did they change it a few years later?
Right.
And then when you go back and you look at that initial board or that committee they put together, a cholesterol committee, the majority of the people on the committee had ties to the pharmaceutical industry. See, where we're going with this is that you're going to realize that these numbers, no one questions. We just follow the leader like sheep. Like there's no real data.
That's what I was saying.
There is none. There is no data.
Pick the number out of the sky.
Well, they didn't pick it out of the sky because they're taking people's numbers, right? And you're looking at serum cholesterol, so what's in the blood, and we don't know. So the average person's like, okay, my cholesterol is high. What does that mean? Well, hey, we don't want you to die, so let's reduce the risk by putting you on this statin, and it's approved by the FDA. We're good. and it's going to help you. Huh. Okay. I guess that makes sense. And if it can reduce the risk of me dying, then hey, put me on a statin because I don't want to die. Right?
And I'm going to ask, what is it doing for me that's going to create that's
Well,
going
it's
to lower
going to
my risk?
so cholesterol in our body is we have cholesterol all over our body. It's created. One of the big responsors of cholesterol is our liver. And so our liver knows when we're low on cholesterol, right? Your brain needs cholesterol. Your cells need cholesterol. We need cholesterol to thrive and to live our best and healthiest life. Cholesterol is very, very, very important. And so the liver knows when you're low on cholesterol to produce more cholesterol. It also knows that if you have more than enough, then it won't produce as much. So what happens with these statins is they go in and inside of the liver, they basically block the liver from producing cholesterol. So then that lowers your cholesterol. Because going back to the Framingham studies and all these studies back in the day in the 50s and 60s, they discovered that if we lower the LDL cholesterol, then that can be good for people as far as living. But in those same studies, what they don't tell people is that the people with the lowest cholesterol died earlier. So you increase mortality but have a lower LDL cholesterol.
I'm confused.
Okay.
Say that again. That doesn't even compute in my brain.
So, well, it's not you. It can get confusing. That's why I want to take my time and just really give people a chance to get the basics and to walk away understanding what we mean by absolute risk and relative risk. And now I'm just kind of giving you some information to help you better understand cholesterol. Like our bodies produce it. We need it. The drugs are designed to block the cholesterol from being produced so that the numbers will be down low. And the only reason why we actually are concerned with cholesterol was because there was a hypothesis that said if you have high cholesterol, you have increased risk for heart attack. Going back to Eisenhower.
That they increased that there'd be more plaque buildup in your arteries.
Right. So yeah. So you're okay. So you're down the road looking at the plaque buildup and all of that. So that's all part of the explanation. But right. I want to keep it simple because everything is based on a number that was told to everyone. You want your cholesterol to be under this number. You want the LDL cholesterol to go down. And there is no concrete, hardcore evidence to support that hypothesis. But
so
yet everybody is preaching it. Everybody is standardized.
Okay, so wait a second. If it's standard
meaning like it's like normal or average.
So doctors they're not really informed. There's like this.
No, that's not true. They are informed. But let's use the word indoctrinated. When you go to school, same as you went to school, what you were taught means you're now being informed by what they believe is what is standardized.
Right.
So you go to school, which is paid for and owned primarily by pharmaceutical companies. Whatever they want you to think and how they want you to think is what is being taught. And you follow the procedures. Otherwise, you can lose your license. So if they say the American Medical Association says that total cholesterol over 240 is not good, then that's standardized.
Right. But then you're not lying because you're doing like, oh, this is what the standard is.
Exactly.
I better get that lowered.
Yeah. You believe that.
Right. So the doctor's not lying to you. He's misinformed.
Well, he's definitely misinformed, but he does believe. And I'm still gonna my goal is to show you that they are, if you omit something and your responsibility is to do no harm and to inform, to practice informed consent, you must do your due diligence and make sure you're in a position to provide informed consent. If it's not informed, that means that that's a big responsibility. It's like a preacher. The Bible's really clear. God is really clear that the people who will be judged the most are the ones out there preaching. Under his banner, under God's banner, you're going to be judged way more harshly than everybody else because you're out there. You're supposed to teach and preach the word.
Right.
And a doctor's supposed to make sure that they're providing information so that there's legit, clear consent. So I'm going to hold them accountable on this.
Okay.
Right. And
I hear
some of
that.
that's going to come clear when we get, in a couple more minutes.
Okay.
But you can already tell, Sharon, that there's some shadiness going on here.
Right.
Because out of nowhere in 1988, they come up with these numbers. Then they changed the numbers. And then they changed the numbers again. They kept total cholesterol at 200, which being bad. But they realized they could get more people on statins if they add a calculator to it. Meaning, if you go to the doctor and let's say your total cholesterol is 185, but you're a type 2 diabetic, put them on a statin. So if you have some other comorbidity, we're going to put you on a statin, even though your total cholesterol is not over 200. That's what goes on right now.
What is the comor? Oh, you mean like
if you have
risk
hypertension,
because you've got diabetes, you're going to be at more
diabetes, hypertension, high triglycerides, you're fully inflamed, you have other
statins
health.
theoretically lower the risk and
No.
areas?
Nope. I never said that. I'm only talking about how they've changed it so that more people qualify to be put on a statin. Their goal is to get you on a statin. Right? like Pfizer owns Lipitor, which the patent expired years ago.
Yeah.
And Lipitor is the #1 selling pharmaceutical drug to date of all time. And there's different brands of Lipitor that are still out there, all statins to lower cholesterol. And the reason why we get pulled into it and why a lot of intelligent, smart people are taking statins is that they went into the doctor, they had high cholesterol based on the number that they call high, and then they tell you the risk of having high, and it's up to you to take a statin so you don't have that high number that you're now thinking about all the time, going to bed at night, can't even sleep because you're thinking about, oh my God, this could be my last night. So I'm going to take, I'm taking that statin because my doctor's smart.
What's not making sense to me is if they don't have the test to back it, if they don't have the studies to back it up, and they pick this number 240 and then they lowered it to 200 so more people would qualify. Obviously, more people have higher cholesterol than 200. Where are they getting the number of how much the risk is if they don't have any study in the first place?
Well, I'm really working hard to get there, Sharon.
Okay.
So you're asking me questions that I'm going to cover.
Okay.
You follow me? But I'm trying to give you and that's fine. Your questions are fine, because I'm sure other people at home are like, okay, so you have these numbers and that is a valid question. Where the hell those numbers come from? They can't even prove that to you. There is no study that really gives them the right to tell us what they're telling us. No one's questioning it. It's kind of like the vaccine. Just take it. And there's a lot of people that didn't question it. They just follow the lead. Oh, okay. They believe Dr. Fauci when he said what he said. And now fast forward, a lot of that hey, wait a minute. Hey, oh man, I can't believe they did. I mean, I would have never done it if I knew. You see what I mean? So the same thing has been going on with cholesterol, just no one's challenging it. Well, that's not true. People have challenged it, but it goes nowhere. It goes to deaf ears because the establishment's like, nonsense. And the people at charge, they're the ones who are at charge, and they're the ones who are running the medical schools. They're the ones who establish what is standardized, what the numbers are, who qualifies. We're the big boys. Robert, you're just a little guy. Be quiet. Okay. You follow me? So let's go back to this picture. Let me see here. Okay. So 54%. Now watch the next slide. You ready?
Yeah.
Look at the 54%. This is what it should be based on what I'm about to share with you. 0.41%. So the absolute risk or outcome would be 41.41, not even a full percent.
So how did you get that number?
I'm going to show you, Sharon.
Okay.
I love it. I love that you're like, okay, how are they able to do this? So let's go old school. So when Lipitor came out, this was the ad that they put out there. It was everywhere. Lipitor reduces risk of heart attack by 36%. 36%. So anyone, think about the fear, like if you had a stroke or a mini stroke, or you're concerned and you go in and the doctor says, hey, you got to take this serious. We got to get you on a statin. And they say, well, what can I do, doc? This statin will reduce the risk of this happening to you as far as a heart attack by 36%. Okay, sign me up, coach. You see how easy that could happen?
Yeah, I do see how easy it
Right?
can happen. And I'm
All
sitting
right.
there going, where did you get the 36?
Okay. So now this, because I mentioned it earlier, this is relative risk.
Relative to what?
I'm going to show you. So here's the study, or the study on how they got to this point to be able to say 36%. Now, if you look to the top left, that is out of 100 people. On the right side is the placebo. On the left side is
Right.
the people, or the right side is the people taking the drug. I mean, the people taking the drug on the right, the people who didn't take the drug on the left. Right.
No,
So sorry, I got it.
you got it backwards.
I'm hungry.
That's
So
right.
the placebo is in the blue to the right, and the drug, people who took the drug, is on the left. And you can see that it says 36% risk reduction. You follow me? We're good?
I'm following you. Yeah.
Now, when you look in a little closer, okay, let me see. I'm going to make this a little wider.
Yeah.
Everybody can see this. If you look at the top left, you can see that 98.1% of the people who were taking the drug were good to go. And then you had 97% with the placebo.
That we're good to go.
The difference was 1.1%. The difference is 1.1%.
Wow.
So what happens is when you have the ad that says 36%, it's true, but it's based on relative risk reduction over a 5-year period. So the actual benefit, when you consider absolute risk reduction, is so much smaller. See, the absolute risk of a heart attack decreased by 1.1% points. So that goes from around 3% to 1.9%. This small improvement was inflated to 36%, the relative risk reduction in the marketing. But the real outcome is it went from 3 to 1.9%. And the difference would be 1.1. And so what they do is they take the 1.1 and they run with that, right? And I'm going to show you the right here. You can see 1.1 divided by 3%, because 100, the placebo is 97, so that's 3%. And then you look at the people in the trial who took the drug compared to the people who took the placebo, the difference was 1.1. Then it's allowed for marketing. They can take the difference, 1.1 divided by 3%, and that's how they get the 36%.
Wow.
It is an outright
Lie.
egregious lie.
Yeah.
That is a complete lie. And so when you have someone who believes, okay, I'm going to go with this drug because the doc said that it will reduce my risk of a heart attack and stroke by 36%.
But can I just back up a little?
Yeah.
What I'm seeing in that is that only 3% of people who had a high cholesterol had a risk of a heart attack. I mean, only 3
Exactly.
people had 3% had
So
so
basically,
cholesterol.
yeah.
Okay.
So basically, people who are on the placebo, the chances of you having a heart attack is with high cholesterol is like nothing.
Wow.
It's like
Cholesterol really, what I read in that is that cholesterol has virtually nothing to do with whether or not you have a heart attack. You're going to have a heart attack or not have a heart attack, but cholesterol isn't going to cause it or not cause it.
exactly. When you look at the data is clear, right? So if you took 100 people, okay, and one person, or you take 100 people and they all take statins, only one of them's gonna 99 are gonna live and one's gonna die. So there's no reason to take the damn statin,
Exactly.
but
Wow.
yet it's being pushed on them and they're making billions of dollars. Billions of dollars.
I don't know whether to cry or get angry.
Well, remember I said in the very beginning, don't be surprised if you get angry when you look at it, because
I'm going through the similar thing about blood pressure medication because my blood pressure is a little high. It's not off the charts high, but it's a little high.
now
And
blood pressure's, to me,
it
that's
does
a serious
affect.
marker. Yeah, that's a
It is
serious
a
marker.
serious marker.
Yeah,
I realize that.
yeah,
But I
that's
don't trust the medications and I don't want I
well,
just
they don't
want
even know about the medications. They guess on the medications,
exactly.
right?
And the
But
medications cause like my sister's ankles are swelling, her legs are swelling. Then they gave her another diuretic to handle the swelling of her feet,
mhm.
you know, and they keep changing the medications and adding more of them in the first place. And her blood pressure's fine, but except when it isn't.
Now,
Okay, I'm sorry. You're back
look at
to cholesterol.
this is what the ad should show.
Who would buy?
Now, think about what I said earlier. You go in, you have high cholesterol, and if they give you the absolute truth, and they said, "Hey, you know what, Sharon, your cholesterol is really high. We're going to put you on a statin." All right, doc, so what is a statin going to do? Well, it's going to reduce the risk of you having a heart attack by 1%. Would you do it then? Of course you wouldn't. No one would if they told you the truth. So this is what I mean by omission.
Yeah,
And you don't think this is a lie?
yeah. That's a
I
lot.
think I call it a lie. Don't tell me relative some crap.
But don't do the doctors really know that it only reduces it by that much, or do they have it in their mind's eye that it reduces plaque and therefore it reduces your risk and you should take it?
Okay. Man, you are so good, because the average doctor that I've talked to, when I bring up absolute risk and relative risk, and I bring up 1%, this is what they always say. Even in the Jupiter study, there's less than 1%. That's the one that they're talking about and pushing right now. They will say, "Hey, look, Robert, 1% is 1%. I go, "I hear you, but can we look at the side effects for a second?" You follow me? So
Absolutely.
to
Because
reduce the
again, there's
risk,
a relative risk for that.
yeah,
I mean,
to reduce the risk by 1%.
you're increasing your kidney and your liver
Well,
risks and all that other stuff.
well, let's take a look at some side effects. All right, here we go. Side effects. Liver damage. Did you know that people on statins, if you're on them long enough, you'll be a type 2 diabetic? Muscle pain. That's the number one thing. People complain a lot about the muscle cramping, etc. And memory loss. Did you know that if you're on a statin, you're way more likely to get dementia?
Wow.
So you're on a statin, you're going to get dementia. You're on a statin, you're going to be a type 2 diabetic. You're on a statin, you're going to eventually have liver damage. You're on a statin and you don't like how you feel, but yet you believe it's reducing your risk of having a heart attack by 36%. Help me make this make sense.
Doesn't.
No, it doesn't at all. It's absolutely crazy. And they're not telling people. And there's all kind of people on stage. I know producers, lawyers, I know doctors. Because what happens is you get to a point in life, Sharon, and this is what I've been noticing lately, is that people get extremely comfortable just kind of going with status quo.
Yeah.
They don't question. And if you question, they get mad. People get frustrated. And everybody just walking around blind. And you're telling me that this wouldn't make you upset? I mean, it makes me upset.
I just can't. What happens for me is I just can't believe that doctors really know this. I mean, they really think they're lowering your risk by 36%. They don't know that they're not lowering it by that.
Okay, so I'm going to share something with you. You ready?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's say that you and I are doctors. And let's say we work for their, I don't know, organization or a hospital. They know if you're prescribing statins or not. And if you're not hitting your quota, we need it.
No,
Oh, yeah.
no.
What do you mean, no?
That just should be illegal. I don't
No.
understand. No.
No, because part of being a doctor is prescribing medication. And what's standardized in the industry is that if you have high cholesterol, which they have a pretty good idea how many people have high cholesterol, and you're not prescribing any statins, and they look and see you have 1,000 patients, and they break it down, and there's 400 patients over 60, and no one is on a statin, we need to do a review of you as a doctor.
And how many of my patients have died because they're not on statins?
Well,
None.
Yeah, but they're not gonna. Now you're talking about becoming a holistic doctor, getting outside. There's a lot of doctors who do want to be legit and they take cash. Most of them don't make it because they're not business people. When you become a doctor, they don't teach you how to run a business. So people get compromised. It's like when people were earning a whole bunch of money on all these different ways by prescribing Ozempic.
Right.
People became millionaires because of the craze of Ozempic. They're not thinking about you're going to lose muscle and God forbid you get cancer and now you're less likely to survive because of your muscle loss. Or you fall down and break your hip and go to the hospital, and most of those people don't make it out, or a lot of them don't make it out. And then 50% of them will break their hip again. And then the next time they won't make it out. But everybody
to Ozempic, like it affects them in that way.
Oh yeah, well, muscle loss affects them in that way. So at the end of the day, what we're talking about is informed consent. Because if everyone was informed, right? And the doctor says, hey, you know, I'm going to put you on this statin to reduce the risk of heart attack by 1%.
I can tell you a funny story about a conversation with the doctor, but it wasn't about cholesterol, so I'll save it until we have. But it's the same kind of thing. I mean, he said, "Oh, we have a drug that could help you," and I said, "By how much?" He said, "Well, it's like a 70%, 30, like 30%. It could help. It could actually. It was some tiny number that it could help me." And then I said, "And if I don't, based on how the progression of my disease, well, you are progressing slowly. So about every 7 years, you should go up another level." Well, I've had this disease for 50 years, and I was at like stage 2, you know. So at his numbers, at about 120 years old, I would have a 50% risk of of cancer if I didn't take his drug. If I take his drug, it would cost me $100,000 and it would reduce my risk of cancer when I'm 120 years old by 50%. Now you tell me why I would want to do that.
Well, and now, if you had that conversation with him again, you say, okay, is this based on relative risk or is this based on absolute
But
risk?
even so, there's like zero.
No, I hear what you're saying, but I'm saying have a moment and then
Okay.
you would be able to go, are you speaking relative risk or absolute risk? And look at that doctor's face, because now they got to answer. Now they got to be clear about it.
Wow.
So
whole
in the
thing
very
is what-
beginning, I showed you this. Look how happy that lady is.
Yeah. She
Is
doesn't know.
this framed around lies, Sharon?
Wow.
I'm asking.
I blame it on the drug companies even more than the doctors, because I think the doctors can't possibly stay up to date on everything.
Okay. Well, they've been. Did you know that they tried to get it where they wanted to put statins in the water?
I'm trying to get rid of fluoride. My sister says, "Why do you? Fluoride's good. You need fluoride." I said, "No, I don't want to brush my teeth with fluoride." I said, "I mean, it's like everybody they make a decision and everybody buys it. It's like it's in everything."
Okay,
You
no,
know.
but let's stay focused. I said, did you know that the industry, the physician world, there was a movement where they wanted to get statins put into the water supply
And thank
because
God they failed.
I mean, they were going to make a ton of money because and they wanted kids to be drinking statins because then they felt it would reduce the risk of everybody having a heart attack. We could,
And
the number one.
increase everybody's liver damage.
Okay, yeah. But I'm just letting you know that while you were sleeping or doing whatever you were doing, there was a committee, a group of people that was working really hard to get it to where statins would be put into the water supply.
And they failed, right?
They
It's
failed,
over?
yeah. It didn't happen. It didn't happen. But this, you can see these kind of things taking place in a lot of areas.
Yeah.
And think about all the people who are on a statin and they start to lose their memory. So I posted and shared earlier today that I have a client. And one day we were talking and she asked me about the balance oil because she's been hearing me talk about dementia and Alzheimer's. And I mentioned this was like 4 or 5 months ago. Actually, yeah, I was thinking it was longer than that. But I asked her, I said, hey, or she brought it up that her husband was on a statin. And I said, well, people on statins tend to have an increased risk of dementia. And you can see the buildup. Well, she had him stop taking the statin. A month goes by, no more memory loss, no more dementia. So when I meet people and they say, yeah, my cousin is showing signs of dementia, I go, how's his cholesterol? I think he's taking a statin. You may want to get rid of the statin and see what happens. You may be able to bring them back.
Mm.
So I call this a lie. If you are a physician and you are not informing your patients about the really low benefit opportunity of taking the statin,
The really low absolute risk.
risk, I feel like that's a lie. I don't have another word for it.
But you've brought out an issue that's even bigger than that. If your job depends on giving out drugs that will hurt your patients, then it's not just the doctor, it's the hospitals they work for, it's the system that they're a part of that's really the problem.
Well, they would say there's no proof that we're hurting people.
Of
Statins
liver damage, diabetes.
well, they would say there's no proof.
So have you done, so what, they haven't done studies that showed that why they got that number from 240 or 200 or whatever their number is. So they don't have any proof that they're fixing a problem. They have all they know is that it's reducing it by 1% absolute risk. But there's also got to be similar evidence about how much damage it's doing to the liver, or you
Oh
wouldn't
no,
be saying
well, they have that, Sharon. It's called side effects. So
that. Oh,
every
they call
drug,
it side effects.
well, every drug has side effects, right? There's pros and cons to everything.
Yeah, but the side effects are onerous.
Yeah, but they can get away with it because it's established.
I'm sorry.
That's why I said it's a lie. I think it's one of the worst things ever. And we've been hoodwinked, we've been bamboozled when it comes to statins and cholesterol.
I think we're bamboozled by all kinds of drugs, frankly.
Yeah, but if you pick one thing at a time, right? It's kind of like when trans fats was in the food supply. There was a lot of people who put up strong arguments that trans fats were better to eat than butter. Even doctors, they used to have advertisements showing people using Crisco because it was cleaner. And now we found out that 80 plus thousand people died every year prematurely because they consumed trans fats. That's been established. I think the number's higher, but if you just went by 84,000, combine all of our wars, and Crisco and trans fats killed way more people than all the wars combined. And I'm seeing the same thing happen right now with seed oils. We know how bad seed oils are, right? But if you went to the American Heart Association's website right now, they tell you and encourage you to eat seed oils.
Yeah.
Right now.
So who am I going to listen to? Robert Ferguson?
Yes.
Or the AMA, or the Heart Association. I mean,
yes. You're going to listen to me.
I know, but how do you get the average Joe to do that?
It's tough, man. It's very tough. I don't know. I'm really working hard to figure that out, Sharon. But the most important thing is
I am so close to crying right now because I'm feeling so helpless to change. And I don't deal with issues that I'm totally or beyond my ability. It's like, what's that serenity prayer? Figure out what you can do something about and do something about it.
Right.
And if you can't, let it go. And it's like, but this is so big and it's so pervasive and it's terrifying. And I mean, I think about, trying to keep people healthy. The only thing I can think of is if a doctor tries to prescribe a drug to me, I generally speaking, I'll just say no, period. But if they really insist on it, I'm going to say, tell me why I really need this. And they've never been able to. So the only thing I take is the thyroid.
Okay. So let's role play for a second.
Okay.
Okay. So I'm Dr. Ferguson and you come into the office and let's say that you don't know what we just talked about. I say, hey, Sharon, it's good to see you today. How you doing?
I'm doing great.
Okay.
I'm doing awesome.
All right. Well, we got your lab work in. I just want to let you know there's one thing that I do got to bring to your attention. You mind having a seat?
You might have what?
Mind having a seat.
Oh, okay. I'm sitting down.
So your cholesterol, I looked at your records. It hasn't really been that high, but right now you're about 265. And total cholesterol shouldn't be over 200. So you're really elevated there, and your LDL cholesterol is really high. So I really want to we need to get you on a statin.
Before you put me on a statin, can you tell me some foods that would help me lower my cholesterol, or the foods that are raising my cholesterol, so I can try food first before you put me on a statin?
Well, we could try food first, Sharon, but where your cholesterol is, I mean, the risk of a heart attack or stroke, I mean, you're no
No spring
25-year-old.
chicken.
So, and I would hate for something bad to happen. And I understand you probably want to, eat better and make some changes there, but I mean, your cholesterol is pretty high, and it would not be wise of me as your physician to have you leave this place without recommending a statin, because it would just kill me to find out that something happened to you.
I hear you, and thank you very much. And I'm going to see what I can find out about food. That's what I would do if this was a real conversation. That's exactly what would happen. I've had that real conversation before.
Okay,
Sorry.
okay, but see, that's you who have lived life and you're wise and you're educated. But imagine the average person who's not educated like you.
Very hard to stand up to it.
Yeah,
And we are trained that doctors are the authority. You don't question your doctor.
that's
I
right.
mean, I remember when I weighed 117 pounds and I saw on my chart slightly obese. And I said to the doctor, I mean, I know I'm, way more than I wanted to, but obese? And he said, "You're not supposed to look at that chart. That's for me only." It was like, are you kidding me? I mean, I have not trusted doctors since I was 18 because they kept doing things that hurt me. So I question everything. I've
Well,
always done it.
and that's good. And you know what? And always question.
I always
Be-
question
yeah,
everything.
because most things can be fixed with a food as medicine approach. But
And
again, a lot of people are compromised, whether they're a physician, whether it's somebody down the street, selling a supplement. And I know when I bring up balance oil to people, because I really believe in it and I've seen nothing but positives and I've done my due diligence, I'm okay when they question it, because I actually salute them and say, hey, I'm glad you're asking, and I look forward to being able to explain it to you.
and here's the thing. I've been doing it. I have gotten my numbers back in balance. Yay, thank you very much. And frankly, I can't tell you physically feeling a whole lot different over it. I'm just, it's like I'm doing okay, but I don't know why. I don't know if it's the Cincino oil kind of thing. And I live in Las Vegas. My eyes are dry. But I don't know whether it's relatively better or not. Any changes that I've seen are definitely relative, and I don't know. But at the same time, I understand that data that says you don't want that gap that I had and you want it back in balance. I
Well,
understand.
well, you know what's different about the balance omega-6 to 3, and let's say the cholesterol committee's 240 cholesterol, and then bringing it
Right.
down to 200, is that it's a global census, right? You have the World Health Organization, you have the European, like their big governing body, you have America, you have like uh, uh, international committees around cancer. They all say that we should be 5-1 or 4-1 or 2-1 or lower. So there is a consensus globally.
Okay.
And they have data where they're able to actually look in 1900 and see where we were, right? On average, 1-1, or in 1960, the ratios were like 3-1. And then there's a lot of,
After Crisco, it all went haywire.
well, and then there's a lot of studies, right? Or like when they go and they look at hunter gatherers and they test them, because they're still hunter gatherers in the Amazon and different places in the world, and they're always in balance. So when you look, I mean, so there's a lot of evidence that supports the omega-6 to 3 ratio. And here's the part that should make us all cry. Your doctor ain't even testing you for that.
No.
Now they're testing you for cholesterol because it's part of the engine, it's part of the system. But they're not testing you for omega-6 to 3.
Okay, so I'm sorry.
I mean,
I mean,
hey, so were you ready for a deep conversation like this? All right, I'm glad Anna's here. I'm glad Susie's here. So hopefully, Susie, did all this make sense? If you guys have any questions,
I saw Susie's comment before that, and that I wondered what, like, it sounded to me like 1% was 1% is the benefit, but okay, so then you're looking at the pros and cons, and
right.
so
And when
yeah,
you look at the pros and cons, that's when you take a moment and you say, okay, if I take the statin, what are the side effects?
exactly. And
And
that's
it,
what always, and a lot of times they'll say, well, yeah, there are side effects, but don't worry about it. This will reduce your risk. And I'll say, well, what are the side
yeah,
effects?
but 1%, I mean, people got to understand, if you take 100 people and put them in a room and you say, okay, all 100 people, we're all going to take statins. So all 100 of you are going to have side effects. And one of you is going to die. I mean, it's like, wait a minute. We're all going to have side
Crawl
effects.
under a rock.
You know what I mean? We're all going to have side effects. Okay. Yeah, I don't like these odds. I don't like those kind of odds. But the people who are watching us have this conversation, they have never known what we're talking about. And
And I'm still
they're
struggling
taking.
with the absolute risk versus the absolute versus, um,
Okay, well, let's go there and then we can end. So
yeah.
let's go back over absolute.
Because like how to determine it is what I'm trying to.
Okay.
Well, I did see what you just did. Yeah. Okay. I don't even know how they got the 36 in the first place then. Oh,
Well, they
the difference between the top line and the bottom line was a 36%. But if they looked at the actual, okay, yeah, it's like,
yeah, well, like when you go, so if you take if you have 100 people, right?
yeah.
And there's other things that are calculated here, but the basics of it,
But
you have
100 people, why would 100 people who had high
high
cholesterol?
cholesterol.
Okay,
So you
100
have
people whose cholesterol was over 200, their risk of dying from a heart attack is basically 3% based on this.
no, no. So you have 100, right? So the first thing you look at is the 36% reduction. And in order to understand that, right, you go uh the people who are taking the drug versus the placebo.
Mhm.
So that's where you saw the 3%. And that's where it gets a little it gets a little confusing. But the difference between the people taking the drug and the people who aren't is 1.1. And that's what's significant. That's what's important. Otherwise, these guys can fudge the numbers and make it look like there's a bigger benefit. And that's what they do, right? Because in the next slide, when you look here, you take that 1.1 and you compare that to the difference between 100 participants and the 97 in the placebo, which gives you 3%. And they're able to divide between the 1.1 and the 3%, which brings in the placebo, to get the 36%. So they're not looking at everybody in the study. They're just looking at the people where you saw a drop or you saw an
Okay. So that's what makes it relative versus absolute.
right. And then
Okay.
they market the relative,
Right.
which
Okay,
is
that makes
which to
I
me,
understand now. I didn't understand before.
but you know what I
Okay.
mean? And that's where it makes it unfair. That's just not fair.
This is not right.
No, it's not.
But what I'm looking at here is, and maybe I'm misunderstanding, but it looked like if you had 100 people, 97% of them had um, didn't have a heart attack at all. 97% of them didn't. then it's only 3% chance of a heart attack because your cholesterol is high. I mean, forget about all the drugs and everything. In the first place, if my risk is 3% versus side effects in a drug, I'm going to say forget it. I mean,
Yeah, I'll do the take the placebo.
Yeah.
Which means don't do nothing. Just keep living your life.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It
So
doesn't compute in my brain that I mean, was concerned, when that doctor was telling me that stuff. I wasn't concerned about what was going to happen when I was 120, but I was concerned about my liver, which is what I've been for 50 years handling. And I have reversed my liver disease.
Right.
Through food.
Yeah. And it doesn't, and it does throw things off, and it does make you go, huh? Wait a minute, this isn't making sense, because it doesn't make sense. Again, if you have 100 people with high cholesterol, and after a year or 5 years, 2 of them die from a heart attack, then that's a 2% absolute risk.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just living.
And here's the other thing that's illogical to me is we tell people to eat all the crap that's out there, all the processed food, all of that stuff that people eat, and they don't, and everybody's eating it, so it's standard. They don't care.
Right.
I mean, but then they take all these drugs to fix the problems that crappy diet did for them. And if they start paying attention to logically what they're putting in their bodies and the results that they're getting, I mean, it just seems like I may never get to my ideal weight, but I know that I am healthier than I was.
Right.
I know it.
And that's great.
And it's not so much about those numbers anymore or the weight, or I mean, I'm 78 years old, looking good, feeling good.
Right.
Capable.
Yeah. So
alive.
we're good. So we're good. Now let me bring clarity. So out of the 100, if 2 of them died, then that's 2%, right? But if you put those people all on statins and it goes down to 1%, only 1 of them dies, then it's really only a 1% absolute risk.
Right.
Yeah. Because you bring in the variable of the statin. And then where they benefit is they go, okay, well, we put people on the statin and we put people on the placebo. We saw it drop with the statin. And then we also saw it, the placebo people did pretty good. And they worked the difference there. That's where the division is. And that's how they come up with 36%.
Yeah.
Which is a lie to me. You're lying to people.
A lie.
And the government,
it's the pharmaceuticals and the government that are
they'll
lie. So the doctor just says whatever because they're following the guidelines.
They allow you to do that because nobody's buying or taking a drug for a 1% chance of being better off.
No.
Nobody's doing that.
No.
So.
Well, I appreciate so my takeaway is learning a little bit about absolute versus relative risk. But in addition to that, it just keeps on confirming my bias against the medical profession. It's not I don't think 98% of any population is evil. And 98% of this medical profession is doing bad things. They're not following the Hippocratic Oath. I'm sorry. And I can't believe that they're evil people, that they're really out to get us. I think that the pharmaceutical industry is out to make money.
Mm-hmm.
But
see, that's where I would like to pick back up in our next conversation with you is just for clarity. You say that you don't believe people are doing it for evil, but what do you call it? They just turn their head and, I didn't see that. I don't want to create waves. I don't want to mess up my business.
Right.
Sharon, just don't talk about it, okay? You're messing up everything for all of us. That's the kind of conversations that are taking place. Can you not mess it up for us? Hey, they're going to die of something anyway. That's hey, I'm telling you, there's some doctors right now all enjoying a glass of rum, having a little Crown Royal, sitting down, having a Jack, a cigar, and they're doing good. And when they go in, they see that we're not putting more people on statins, and hey, guys, come on, nurses, everybody get in here. I mean, what's going on? The numbers are down. The numbers are down. And then you got to get the numbers back
So
up.
the hospital gets paid by the drug company for having that as a quota?
I don't know. I don't know
true?
I don't know the details of how all of that works with the doctors. Like, I didn't know that there was a way that they were doing kickbacks on Ozempic until a friend of mine told me about it, how he was getting paid. So every time he prescribed Ozempic, he was being rewarded for that.
Rewarded for it. Wow.
So they know, but the average doctor ain't going to mess with his money. He's not going to come out and just tell everybody how it all works. Then what's the point of being a doctor? So then we need to become socialized so that everybody just gets a check and you just treat people, but you don't have the capitalism part of it where you can really, take things to the next level. You don't want just a regular job. You want to be able to, I mean, not me, but
you can do it by getting better results for people, and you can get better results.
You don't get, but we don't pay people more money for getting better results.
I would.
But that's where it is. So last words, any questions for me? And I apologize. I need to give more examples of this, and I'll put it in my article so that people.
It's just, I realize this because I am more open than most. And when I think about having this conversation with my sisters, they would just, I love my doctor. If he tells me I need this, I'm taking it.
Yep.
And I know these doctors, and I know how busy they are. So I don't believe that they really do the research.
No, they don't. Okay, there's doctors right now, thousands, millions of doctors, if there's millions right now, who will tell you that if you want to lower your cholesterol, don't eat eggs. Stop eating the egg yolk and cut back on, steaks and eating meat. Because they were taught that if you eat cholesterol, that's part of why the cholesterol levels go up.
But you're saying our liver manufactures cholesterol. Doesn't have anything to do with that.
Right. But now it is taught in medical school that eating an egg yolk doesn't cause your cholesterol to go up. So the new doctors know that, but there's a whole bunch of old doctors that don't know that. And they're still out there telling people to quit eating egg yolks.
And what's happening is my sister is starving right now because she reads all these things. Eggs are good for you. Eggs are bad for you. I better not eat. This is bad for me. Everything's bad for her. Everything is bad for her. So she doesn't eat, or then she goes crazy and eats crappy stuff because why bother? I can't control it anyway. Right. And I don't know how to inform her well, other than to get her onto some basic balanced diet that, instead of like blocking out whole food groups that she shouldn't eat, because that doesn't make sense logically to me. Right. But what you teach is a logical, balanced approach to food. And it's not just food as medicine, but we are what we eat. And I'm learning that more and more as I get older, Yeah.
Well, there's a whole bunch, Sharon. So I want to say thank you for making time. And Bernadette, thank you for the great words. She enjoyed the conversation.
Thank you.
And then what did she say, Sharon? She says, Sharon, congratulations on the journey of health you've been on. You're an inspiration as a leader and coach.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you, Sharon. I appreciate you. And and you know what I love about this conversation? Well, there's a lot of things I like about it. is how it started and how you came around to see why I feel passionately that some of these people are lying. And it's not me being
It breaks
mean.
my heart. That's what happens inside me. My heart is breaking because we don't have access to functional medicine and doctors who are not tied to the system where that's where their money comes from. I mean, I was looking at, I'll just, this is an aside, but I was going through all Polly's bills and everything today and from her insurance company, and they charged her $7,938 for the drugs they gave her in the hospital after she had her knee replacement surgery. It was something like 46,000 for the knee, the surgery, and 43,000 for some other piece of it. I mean, they charged over $239,000 this year to her. She didn't have to pay it. Medicare pays it, but we pay Medicare.
That's right.
I mean, we're still paying for it. Just you can go, well, I'm old, it's free, it doesn't matter. It does matter.
It does matter.
Anyway, that's my.
All right. So we'll be back next week. You guys will be in a little earlier when we do the live. and we'll keep it going. And then I will share this article that I wrote where I explain and give you some good examples to make it easier for people. And if you're catching the replay, just look in the description area and you will see that there's an article that kind of like supports the conversation that we just had.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, you have a good evening, and thanks, everybody.
I'm going to write an article about gratitude. I'm going to be included in a book on gratitude. I'm going to go write an article. That'll be my fun activity this weekend.
Okay. Well, enjoy writing that article, and we look forward to reading it. All right, everybody. Until the next one.
Yeah,
peace out.
Thank you.
In a world of thanks, there's a new way to see. No more counting calories, just living free. Robert Ferguson's got the plan you need. With diet-free life, it's the key. No more starving, getting rid of inflammation. Choosing healthy choices, providing you with sound information. Bringing balance to hormones and insulin through food. With DFL, teaching you food choices to see you through. DFL, we're teaching you to eat food right. Teaching you to pair food with each bite. Balancing our body's microbiome, feeling so right.